economic performance and success. I think that's obviously going to be something that we strongly use to look at. However, it's not the only thing, and I think it's also important for us to understand what economic success can look like in different forms. So just to back up a little bit, and particularly going back to your previous question as well, and how I really spoke about a diversified economy. I just wanted to expand on that a little bit more. That we certainly do appreciate how that diversity in our economy really adds to our benefit when there are downturns in a broader economic landscape. Whereas we're not dependent on a boom or bust cycle of oil industries or whether or not there are conflicts in the Middle East that might hamper oil supply chain and have a drastic impact on those prices. We are very reliant on a variety of industries. As the member opposite would be well aware, agriculture plays a massive role in our economy. Ag tech as well, and ag manufacturing. The larger manufacturing sector as a whole is a massive industry player and adds to our diversity, as well as our aerospace sector, with added connection to defense, which is seeing a big growth as a result of federal government policy changes. Additionally, our life sciences sector plays a significant role in growing our economy and employing many Manitobans in high-paying jobs in research, technology, and innovation. Our resource sector plays a strong role as well in oil and gas development and the mining sector, which is seeing a massive boom in creation of jobs in the mining sector right now. And I think it's due in part to changes in prices globally, but also in our government's ability to support projects and get them to completion. As well as I think certainly the creative sector, film and tech, communication sector is certainly a strong diversity that gives our economy here in Manitoba some of the resilience that we might see compared to other jurisdictions. We also use metrics in addition to GDP as really looking at some of the other aspects that make a more wholesome and fulsome approach, I would say, or rather a fulsome view of our economy. Things like unemployment rate, participation rates, even housing starts, which is, of course, up, as member opposite might know. Building permit values, which again is up 21% year over year. We look at employed Manitobans, up, almost 11,000 Manitobans, right? That unemployment rate continues to be one of the leaders in the country, having a low unemployment rate. And particularly in a province where we look to build, and a government where we look to build, having a skilled tradesperson and looking at how many of those folks are employed and having that number be up as well are all strong indicators that our economy is doing very well, given the global challenges that we are, I would say, in many respects outperforming competitors in this challenging environment. And we're providing the right landscape for investors to seek and find Manitoba as the right place to make their future investments.
The Honourable Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, and thank you to the Minister for that. I'll definitely hope to have the opportunity to dive down into the actual industries and ask questions around what we're seeing. Really, the lack of growth and strength and the economic decline around some of those industries is concerning, something that I think the government should be representing more thoroughly. But I'll continue on the question line around our basic overarching performance. And I'd like to ask the Minister if he thinks that GDP per capita is a fair metric for his performance as the Minister responsible for jobs.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Chair. So I can see that the member is trying to boil down an economy into a single metric, right? And that's not I would think, the healthiest approach to assessing the success of an economy. I think there are many factors that we should be looking at, and we do look at as a government, and I outlined some of them just previously. Things like unemployment rates, things like participation rates. Again, those are both areas where we're seeing improvements in Manitoba. Things like even average weekly earnings. Again, we're seeing a 3.5% increase year over year. Things like, housing starts and Manitobans who are employed, working Manitobans. Those are all things that I think are very important, and we take them very seriously and look at those metrics as well. And so I think our job, and we look at our role, is to really create the conditions and the landscape and the underlying atmosphere and conditions for a successful economy. That's what we do in our department, and we try to provide the right tools for an economy to thrive. We can see that the work we're doing is having some lasting impact and positive impacts and some good successes. And that's why we highlight those things like 10,800 new jobs being created just over the last month. That's a sign that our economy is thriving, that more businesses are making the investments to grow here, and that they're hiring more people as a result. That's why we see the things like not only jobs being added, but the fact that wages are increasing as well. Another good sign that people are being able to advance economically here in Manitoba. So when we see these factors, when we see the unemployment rate continue to be better than many other jurisdictions, we know that our plan is working. When we face headwinds, like we do in the uncertainty of the U.S. trade relationship, and we know that there's an issue when it comes to exports, what we do is we work with businesses. We work to support them. And one of the avenues we did is through our export support program. So I highlighted that in my opening comments, highlighting that our export support program was doubled throughout the last year, meaning that we increased the amount of dollars that businesses could access to help them reach a new trade show, an international fair, going to make a connection with a business in a global setting so that they could, make a new deal, get a new business contact, make some sales, make their supply chain more resilient, release the pressure of the uncertainty of the tariffs from the White House. And so these are the things that we do as government to support businesses. And that's just one program as an example of how we've allowed more businesses to connect to global partners, international opportunities that has strengthened our economy here in Manitoba. So when we look at the success of our government's role in fostering a healthy economy, we look at all these factors, and then we take action working alongside the business community that not only support their opportunities to withstand the challenges that we're seeing from an ever-pressing global economy and ever-changing and global economic landscape, but also one that's ever more competitive. So to remain competitive and put Manitoba at the best foot forward, we need to be more proactive. And that's exactly what these sort of initiatives, like our export support program, is actually doing. So I think it's very important to make note and comment on those things as well, because it does show not only the health of our economy, the role that we play as government in doing that, and the success that we've had so far in doing that work, and the success that we anticipate having in the future based on the programming that we've laid out thus far.
The Honourable Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Would the minister then, we'll bounce around a little bit here, but it's good that the minister led us down this path to talk about the export support program. Would the minister be able to outline what the dollar value is of that program, over the last 2 years, because I believe it came in last year's budget as part of the contingency budget for the government. And would he be able to outline the costs and also what percentage of an increase to the budget that program represents?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you. So I appreciate the question regarding the export support program. It's I think, been a very successful program now that our government has been promoting it and talking about it with the business community. And we've been using it as a tool to make sure that businesses have the opportunities to go seek out the next opportunity. Like I spoke to a company who was on and he got some of those dollars and went on an opportunity to go to a show internationally. And they said when they came back that they had just like a list, like a whole stack of contact cards, right? And they found that very valuable. For a couple of reasons. One, they got a ton of contacts. Afterwards, they followed up and did the work and went back and reached out to the companies who were specifically interested. Ended up getting some successful deals and more business as a result of it. But the second benefit is that they got a ton of exposure by being at these events, seeing what was out there, seeing what other people in the similar industry or fields are up to. Gave them ideas of how to improve their own business and how to become more competitive, how to up their game a little bit, and therefore raise their own ability to grow and become a successful company here in Manitoba. So there's a ton of value that companies get from increasing their exposure and attending these sort of events, including the fact that they get to have that exposure and build and grow their network, right? I think a lot of folks in the business community know how powerful LinkedIn is these days, right? And having those connections with other folks in the business community. And so building those connections, whether it's virtual or in person, like we support through our export support program, is really powerful. And I think even coming out of the pandemic, when a lot of business connections were only made virtually, it's even more powerful now to have those face-to-face meetings, those opportunities where you get to see someone across the table from you or shake their hand at the end of the meeting. I think that's more and more what business leaders are telling me gets the job done, gets the deal over the finish line. And that's what we value as well as part of our government. And so that's why one of the reasons why we're continuing to support the Export Support Program as a very successful program. So just to clarify, in the previous year, there were 47 companies that participated in the Export Support Program that received about $255,000. Now that was in the previous year, 2024. That year, the budget for the program was $500,000. So it wasn't fully used. The following year, when we really started to promote the program in 2025, we increased that to 84 companies, and and at the same time, we also doubled the allotment for that fund up to $1 million, and we expended the full $1 million. So these gave significant more opportunities for companies to utilize the export support program. Again, we've doubled the amount of it. So this is a huge lift to companies who want to go out and reach more companies. And really, I think the point to make is that not only did we have the foresight to do this and continue to expand it, this program, throughout the challenges we're seeing in the tariffs coming out of the White House, but also, I think we really got a chance to give our companies a leg up, give them the leg up in the long-term success of their business. So I really want to shout out to the program staff who helped to initiate the increased volume of this program. It's been really beneficial for many companies. We're going to continue to engage with those companies, encourage them to put their best foot forward, tell the great story of Manitoba, utilize this program to grow our economy here at home, and continue to share the success of this program.
The Honourable Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Thank you to the Minister for giving us some insight on that program. I appreciate it. Would the Minister be able to give us some numbers on how much we've seen an increase in export from Manitoba since that program's been rolled out? So essentially, for the $1.25 million, how much have we seen export numbers increase?
Honourable Minister.
Thanks. I appreciate that. So I'll probably, the Manitoba Bureau of Statistics would probably have the exact numbers, so you probably want to refer to them, but I'll just talk briefly just about our Manitoba. One of the reasons why we know that these programs are successful. In light of the trade changes in the United States, people are saying that their U.S. customers it's harder to work with them because of the tariff front. And so many of our manufacturers are looking for new export markets. Us helping them and providing them support to either make the case to those U.S. customers that they've had for a long time but are now questioning whether they want to purchase from us, continue to purchase from us, or find new markets in Asia, or find new markets in India or in Europe, are all the sort of things that businesses are looking for. So our export support program is actually very well received by the business community, and it is showing significant amount of successes. We look at some of the trade shows that we know businesses have attended, things like our Bio International, the largest life sciences conference, the Prospectors Developers Association of Canada, the largest mining conference, Agritechnica, one of the largest ag manufacturers conferences in Europe, I believe in Germany, their Team Canada trade mission to Mexico. I've heard from companies from each one of these trips who've said not only is it valuable, but they came away with more business opportunities as a result of participating on those events. And so we know that our ability to foster an economy that works for businesses is also dependent on our ability to adapt for long-term success and economic growth. And so our ability not only to put forward programs like this, but in the face of tariffs, adapt. We've understood and saw the tariffs that came into place. We listened to the business community, we adapted, we doubled the program so more businesses can participate, find new markets, make sure they had resilient supply chains, and that's how we continue to have a long-term economic success.
The Honourable Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have that statistic available, but I think everybody realizes that, as the Minister stated, as we all realize, that Manitoba's economy is quite diversified, with a significant portion of our GDP contribution being in agriculture. So I appreciate that the Minister has highlighted manufacturing as being the highlight to export, but in reality, our economy is represented by much more than manufacturing, and nearly every other aspect of our exports for Manitoba has been uninterrupted by trade disputes with the United States. Many of our exports go to other countries, not that they haven't been disrupted in some way, shape, or form, but largely they've been uninterrupted, and whatever interruptions have existed have opened the markets. And when we look at agriculture, the trade and export of those goods are not as time sensitive as unless it's livestock, but if it's commodities, and especially processed commodities, are not as time sensitive. And it's commonplace that that month-long or year-long interruptions aren't devastating to that market. So I can appreciate the focus that the Minister has made on manufacturing, but would the Minister be able to maybe provide this committee with those statistics to highlight the percentage of exports that are represented by manufacturing in Manitoba, total exports for Manitoba, and then, if supportive of that, tell Manitobans and this committee exactly the entire picture of our export market, and how that would tie to the export support program.
The Honorable Minister.
I appreciate the question. So first of all, I think remember Opposite is asking about our manufacturing exports and export market in general, and what percentage that plays and what role the export support program would play to facilitating growth in those areas. But I think the undertone of the member Opposite's question is a little bit to downplay the role that the U.S. market plays in our exports a little bit, to say that maybe the changes that from the tariff landscape in the U.S. aren't having a significant role in our economy here in Manitoba. I'm not sure if that's the theme of members Opposite's question, but that's kind of the tone that I was getting, and I just wanted to maybe dispel that a little bit. It has had a significant role in our entire country's economy when it comes to exports. Manitoba, like many other provinces, the vast majority of our exports go to the United States. In fact, in Manitoba, and it's roughly around the 73% of all of our exports go to the U.S., right? That is a really significant number. Imagine 7 out of 10 of every product or item, service, that leaves Manitoba's borders and is exported internationally goes to the United States of America. That's a market that is impossible to ignore, and it's quite frankly impossible to diversify away from in just one single year, and that would be the same true for any jurisdiction in the country. And I think for us, it's not necessarily about shrinking the American pie necessarily from a business perspective. It's about growing the pie in other parts of the world. And so that's the effort that we're doing with our export support program. It's allowing businesses to diversify markets to help and ensure that their supply chains, their customer base, is as resilient as possible in any uncertainty that might occur in the economy. The other point I want to make, away from the manufacturer's aspect of that, is that even though we know that the Canada-U.S.-Mexico Free Trade Agreement allowed many exporters to continue on a fairly similar landscape as prior to the introduction of tariffs, the atmosphere in the U.S. Was shifted, where there was a lot of uncertainty, both from Canadian and U.S. investors, where they were more hesitant to purchase product or purchase it with a long lead time, or purchase it with any recurrence, which meant that it made it more challenging for U.S. businesses on the back end, who are then trying to supply the U.S. market. And as a result, Manitoba businesses were challenged from that standpoint as well. So even though in the industries where they did not feel the direct tariff financial impact, they felt the uncertainty as a result of the tariffs played a significant role in decision-making and market decisions, which impacted Manitoba businesses and businesses right across the country. And so there was that aspect as well. And the third point I want to make is that there was also significant impact of the canola tariffs and pork tariffs from China. And so the People's Republic of China imposed tariffs on our market here, which affected agriculture producers. As of course, member Opposite might know, Manitoba is the largest pork exporter in Canada. And so that fact had a large impact. And canola is also a large major export from Canada as well, canola seed, canola meal. Those have played real impacts. And the PRC making a massive change to their tariff changed the landscape from export as well over the past year. And so I do think that our role in fostering a strong economic landscape by providing and doubling our export support program has allowed producers in ag tech, in manufacturing, in some of the services, and some of the other technical skills, more opportunities to find new markets. And so I think just here by share, we're seeing that this is a share of trade data I'm getting here. This one right here. Roughly here, yeah, so we're looking at, so 2024, so the numbers I had there are 2024. We're looking at roughly 72% US exports, China was 7%, Japan was 4%, Mexico was 3%, South Korea was 1%. Those are the 2024 stats on percentages of exports out of Manitoba to international companies from 2024. I'm just running out of time. If the member wants, after the next question, I can provide some of the stats from 2025.
The member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you. I appreciate that response, but maybe I'll make it more pointed and more specific, because you know, as I've seen personally, you know, as I represent the southeast corner of the province, you know, one of the strongest entrepreneurial, business-led regions of our province. I talk to business owners, exporters, each and every day, as well as I am one myself. I'm sure the minister knows that I'm a business owner, that business is dependent on export, as well as an agriculture producer. So I not only know it as a representative of the people of my constituency, I realize it firsthand. So I am able to resonate the message to the minister that a lot of the downturn in our growth has not been due directly to tariffs. So I'd ask the minister if him together with his staff would be able to supply the data on how much of our exports were directly impacted by tariffs. So that's not the uncertainty in the market, the what ifs, the people being uncomfortable with selling to the States, Americans being uncomfortable buying from Canadians. None of that, just what percentage of the exports of Canada were directly affected by changes to tariff agreements.
The Honourable Minister.
I thank the member opposite for the question. Thank you, Chair. I think the member opposite is trying to separate two things that are inseparable. You can't separate the tariffs from the impact of tariffs, right? You're saying you're trying to suggest, tell me what the impacts of the tariffs have been without saying all of the chaos that talking about tariffs has also caused. They happen at the same time. They're one in each other, essentially the same problem, and they're having a ripple effect impact throughout the entire Canadian economy and, quite frankly, across the world economy. And so it's impossible to really separate and say that, a tariff percent that was put on item X has had this much percentage, whereas the companies who delayed investment in product Y doesn't count as an impact as a result of the first decision, right? They're correlating. They're inseparable. They work together. And that's why the impact and the uncertainty of the tariffs are a really challenging situation for the economy. I think what we're seeing coming out of 2025 is that companies are starting to now understand the current landscape, that there are still right places to make investment, which is why we're starting to see Manitoba become the right place to make those investments in. We are seeing that having a diversified economy, having a place like Manitoba that has clean, base load, reliable energy, that has great universities with an incredible opportunity for people to get a great education, low-cost education, do so affordably with one of the most affordable costs of living and housing prices. I think quite frankly, people are seeing what we did when it comes to taking the PSC off grocery prices and saying, yeah, Manitoba is the place to be. Manitoba is the place to be. They're hipping and hollering and saying that, yeah, I want to come here. I hear young people across the country saying, you know what? I'm going to move back to Manitoba. Maybe I went away for school in BC, Ontario, but I'm going to come and get a job in Manitoba. I can get a job, get a good paying job. Eventually I'll own a home. Maybe one day I'll even get a cottage and enjoy a really good, high quality of life here in Manitoba. That's what you get here. When businesses hear that story, that they can offer to their employees with a good wage that is very good for our economy here, but is even in some cases more competitive than in other jurisdictions. In many jurisdictions, particularly Southern Ontario, from the employer's standpoint, when they hear that story, when they hear our hydro rates, and know that they can have reliable baseload power at among the lowest rates in the country, large employers are saying, yeah, sign me up. When they can see a parcel of land available in Manitoba versus what it might cost in Ontario, they say, yeah, this is a great place. Maybe I want to be located in southeast Manitoba. Maybe I want to locate in the Pembina Valley. Maybe I want to locate in Centerport or in Westman. This is a great opportunity here. So I think all of that uncertainty that we saw in the economy is wrapped up and intertwined with the actual tariffs itself. They're inseparable. And so certainly we have been feeling, and all jurisdictions across Canada have been feeling the impacts of tariffs. So it's impossible to really break out one versus the other. We can certainly tell you that exports have undoubtedly changed and decreased over 2025 as a result of the tariffs, but I think our government has responded very strongly, both with our ability to work with the business community, provide programming like our export support program, helping businesses navigate specifically changing their NOx codes and understanding how to make sure they qualify for become CUSMA compliant. We've done that work. Worked with partners like CME to provide that training and do those sort of things. Reinvest in our own Canadian economy by having our B2B supply chain, B2B business connection events. Actually work with our business council on the U.S. Trade relationship, do the advocacy work with the federal government on advocating for businesses in Manitoba's needs, what they need to be heard when it comes to that CUSMA conversation. So we'll continue to do that work throughout 2026 because it's really important for our business community and for workers in Manitoba.
The honourable member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I would probably beg to differ on some of the comments that the minister made, with Manitoba being second to none for regulatory burden. for small businesses and medium-sized businesses. I don't think it's fair for the minister to say that it's the what-ifs and uncertainty in the export environment that is driving down investment or growth of businesses, export businesses in our province. And I don't want to dwell on one area because we have so many to go over. So I'd ask it again because I think it's very straightforward. It's very simple. It's very clear what the tariff changes have been over the last 2 years and where those changes have been imposed. I think it's also very easy to see the makeup of our export market for Manitoba in general. So I think it's reasonable for the minister and his department to supply us with that information. But if the minister isn't able to provide that at this time, I'd ask that the minister take it under advisement and provide those numbers for us at a later time. But again, to make it clear, I'd like to know what impact the changes to tariffs have had over the last 2 years, and what percentage that represents of total Manitoba exports.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Chair. I thank the member opposite for the question, and I do really see, understand, why you're asking these questions. It's very important, right? This is the largest impacting factor in our economy that we've experienced over the last 2 years. And I understand you have a, personal connection as well, not only yourself and your own personal business, but also your community, the folks you're advocating for as well. And I talked to those folks as well in our economy who are impacted by tariffs. And they tell me that it's both the actual tariff dollars and it's the uncertainty effect that are hurting them. I talked to many businesses, in fact, that are saying that it's almost the uncertainty is worse because of the lack of commitment on investors or lack of commitment purchasers or folks who aren't sure about whether they're going to have the ability in the long term to commit to making this purchase because of what might change from the direction of the White House at any given moment. And so, again, I'll go back to my comment I made in the last point, where it is inseparable to really distinguish between the true economic impact on our GDP. And if you're looking at just boiling it down to a GDP number, is to separate what the impact is just to the tariffs and to the uncertainty, because there's many deals that we won't know would have happened had we not been in that situation where we have had that ever-changing climate over the past year and a bit. And so our responsibility is to provide an ecosystem in Manitoba where we have a framework for success economically, and that's exactly what we've done. We brought together a business council, a U.S. Council on Trade, to understand the impacts of businesses. We advocated for those needs from the business community directly to the federal government. We deferred some of the taxes for businesses during that time period. We aligned and strengthened our Canadian economy with our Fair Trade in Canada Act, as well as our ability to build strong relationships with the United States and our largest trading partner. We did initiatives like doubling our export support program to help businesses strengthen their supply chain and make new connections internationally. We've seen a lot of success in this program, as I highlighted. Nearly double the amount of businesses were supported, and using for the first time the full allotment of dollars in that budget to ensure that more small, medium-sized enterprises have opportunities to find success in the global market. And so our team really understands that you're looking for some of those specifics, but I'll just reiterate that yes, we've seen a drop in imports as a result of the tariffs from the U.S. and from China. If it had impacts in our agriculture, manufacturing, steel sectors, undoubtedly. And that uncertainty as a result of both of those changes have had ripple affecting impacts throughout our entire economy. And that story is true for every province and territory in our country. So I will continue to champion the fact that our government has done an incredible job of withstanding those issues, those challenges, that we continue to work with and alongside our business community, and that our programming is setting the right sort of environment for future success. And so I would continue to encourage the member to understand how we can build a successful economy here, one that is powered and strengthened by our diversity in our economy, not relying on the boom and bust cycle of one industry, but really having a fulsome approach to economic success. We're trying to continue to build that approach, whether that's through energy products, whether that's through advancing manufacturing, strengthening our aerospace sector, leaning into our life sciences, or understanding how we can become the most innovative, creative sector and province in our country. So we're going to continue to do all that good work and build an economy that's resilient and that is growing for Manitoba businesses and workers.
The member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Unfortunately, we weren't able to get a clear answer from the minister on that very important question. But I do think it's an unfair representation of the state of export in our economy, and an unfair representation of the economic strength or weakening resilience that we see in Manitoba. Manitoba exporters have been preparing for a change in the CUSMA agreement, what used to be the NAFTA agreement. We saw that the current administration in the United States is the same administration that brought forward the last trade agreement for North America. If a business is in export trade with other countries, this is just part of doing business. So, many within the industry, specifically those that have functioned for a longer period of time, have been preparing themselves, for what the change in trade agreements could mean. And that's everything from manufacturing right down to supply managed agriculture. This is something that has never provided certainty in really Manitoba's history, never mind recent history. So I think there's a short period through the late 1990s when we could have rest assured that we had some certainty. But I don't know if that certainty could be said to have been any longer than the certainty that we've seen through the CUSMA agreement. So I think it's unfair representation and excuse for any potential downturn that we may be seeing in our economic strength, specifically our export strength in Manitoba. And it's disappointing that the minister isn't able to provide the actual statistics, which I think probably a good solid Google search here, maybe while the minister is researching and discussing with his department. I could do some research myself to provide that to Manitobans and the committee here today. But what we're hearing, not only as the opposition, as the critic to this portfolio, as a representative of my constituency, but we're also seeing through surveys done by industry groups like the Canadian Federation of Independent Business. We're seeing quite concerning statistics coming out that more businesses are looking at closing or leaving Manitoba than looking to settle in Manitoba or expand in Manitoba. And when we dive deeper into the rationale behind these decisions, it's the rising regulatory burden that we see in Manitoba being the largest barrier to growth. So my question to the minister is, would he agree that outpacing tariff uncertainty, the actual effects of tariffs and the changes that they've brought, that regulatory burden is leading the decision for more businesses to close or relocate than grow and establish in our province?
The Honourable Minister.
Well, first, Honourable Chair, I'd like to maybe just dispel or dissuade the member opposite from having that glass half empty approach to his narrative, right? I think the glass is half full here for our economy. And my thinking is that businesses are coming to Manitoba. And I've got a lot of great stories to tell. First of all, you paint the narrative that businesses are fleeing the province. I don't think that's true. Recent stories and articles are talking about even just the commercial vacancy in downtown Winnipeg is on the decline. More businesses are coming back to the downtown Winnipeg to locate their businesses and find success for the growth of their organization and their enterprise, right? So more businesses are doing that. We know that there's great opportunities here. We know folks in the aerospace sector are growing, whether that's you're talking about Standard Aero or you're talking about Magellan. NFI Group, for example, they are growing. They've announced that with their all-Canadian build, they've hired more people. They've grown their opportunities for sales. This is a fantastic opportunity here. Businesses are not only rooting in Manitoba, they are growing in Manitoba, and businesses that are from outside of the province are seeing Manitoba as the right place to be. So we're very pleased with the continued success we have. We know we're going to do more, but with right now, under the uncertainty landscape we've been on for the last 14 months, we're doing very well in terms of growth and new prospects of companies coming in here, setting down roots, and establishing Manitoba as a place to find their economic success. Member Opposite talks about regulatory burden. So if there's a specific issue, I'd like him to highlight it, if there's a specific regulatory burden, because our government has done an intensive amount of work to improving the permitting processing system we have here in government. A significant increase over the former government, which let so much red tape through. They spent time counting the red tape. They put more red tape in to count the red tape. That's what we saw in the last government. But I'll digress. I'll give the member opposite instead some examples of how we've actually improved the system for businesses to go through. So particularly and specifically on mining, we've actually decreased the processing time over the last year by 28%. So again, that means it's a 28% reduction in the average permitting time for a mining project. That's a real and significant impact. I don't know if the member caught that. I'll just repeat it again. On a mining permitting time, it's a 28% improvement in the processing time. That's a real credit to the team, our government's commitment to doing that work, our team's effort to implement those strategies and do it in a new and more efficient and an increased way. And we're very happy with some of those results. That's on the mining side. I'll give the member another example. On the permitting side, for quarries, there was a massive wait list for the quarries left by the former government. And so we've seen over the last 18 months a reduction of nearly 24% in the quarry permitting wait list, in the backlog. Now that is a huge improvement from what it was under the former government, which let those applications just sit and sit and sit and sit. And so instead, we're actually taking action. We're improving the system, making it work more efficiently, getting more businesses up and running more quickly, making sure that the permit and regulatory approval process is as streamlined as possible. We'll continue to do that work. So if there's a specific issue the member has, please bring it to the table, instead of having this glass half empty approach about our economy.
Before recognizing the next speaker, I just want to ask all members to refrain from back chatter and heckling and commentary when it's not your turn and you're not the recognized member. The Honourable Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. I disagree that with the Minister that I see the glass as half empty versus half full. On this side of the House, we would just like to see a Manitoba where the glass is completely full. We see the opportunity that our great province has, and we also see that government stands in the way of our potential. So maybe to clarify my previous statement, and to add to some of the comment that the Minister had made, that improvements have been made to the regulatory process and red tape involved in industries, specific industries. He highlighted mineral exploration and extraction around quarries and mine establishment. So that's one specific. But with that being said, would the minister agree that regulatory burden is one of the largest restrictions and limitations to business growth in our province, if not the largest?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Chair. I'll answer the member opposite's question very directly. No, I don't agree, because I think his assertions are incorrect. I don't think a regulatory burden is the overwhelmingly largest impact to any impact to businesses. And I'll also say that I think our government has done a really good job of aligning business needs with regulatory approvals. And so we've not only taken a really strong approach with making our government work more efficiently. We've done a lot of work to understand how we can streamline some of these processes, particularly when it comes to environmental reviews, permitting, processing. And we were happy to announce last week, Premier and Prime Minister announced that we're undertaking the environmental impact assessment and bringing a one project, one review approach to those assessments. It's a new cooperative agreement with the federal government to streamline approaches. It's a great example of how we're working more efficiently to get projects done, get businesses working in Manitoba. I think that's a really efficient way to work. I don't know, I suppose the member opposite is suggesting that's not a good idea. I'm also saying that I know, led by our great Minister of Innovation and New Technology, has done a tremendous amount of work to reduce barriers and burdens and hurdles, and really doing a lot of that work to reduce red tape across all government departments. And it does it in some of the most innovative ways anywhere in the country, with applying new technology, applying a creative lens to many of those initiatives. I think it's remarkable. And so I applaud Minister of Innovation and New Technology for his incredible work that helps to lead and shape our government. On top of all that, we've actually been happy to sign on to the MRA, which is the Mutual Recognition Agreement. It's a framework of agreement that Manitoba, alongside all the other provinces and territories, signed on to recognize goods that are sold across the country, to help ensure that we reduce as much friction from goods being sold in any province or territory in our nation when they're being sold. So we want products to flow. We want manufacturers, exporters, anyone who's selling goods and services across the country to have that ability to sell and work in an efficient way. And so that's why we signed on to the MRA, which allows more products, more goods to be sold with ease across our country, removing as many barriers and having them mutually recognized in different jurisdictions. That's the work that we're doing as Manitoba to actually facilitate and reduce any, as the member opposite phrases it, regulatory burden. In addition to all this work, when it comes down to actually saying, well, are we doing good or bad in terms of our ability to reduce barriers? Well, Member opposite has referenced the CFIB in his previous question, so I'll reference them as well in this one. They gave us an A- grade, one of the tops in the country when it comes to internal trade in their last report. One of the best in the country in terms of our ability to reduce interprovincial trade barriers. So I think member opposite is off base in his suggestion that regulatory burden is overly burdensome here in Manitoba compared to other jurisdictions. And if he doesn't believe me, then believe the same people he's quoting in CFIB when they give us an A grade, one of the best in the country.
The honourable member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. It's almost mind-boggling that response, but you know, the exact source that the minister had just quoted for an A- in internal trade, the same report gave this government an F, a failing grade on regulatory burden, the exact question that I asked. What's also quite bizarre is that the minister in the previous response to my question and in the last question had said how the government is cutting red tape, speeding up the process for approvals in mines and quarries, and the great work that other departments are doing in reducing red tape. But when I asked a simple question, if there's more work that needs to be done to reduce red tape, to encourage business development in our province, and whether or not the minister would agree that that regulatory burden, red tape, was one of the most substantial contributing factors to limiting business growth in our province, if not the most. So they were two separate. I don't need the minister to agree that that it may not be the most. It may be that may be the tariffs and U.S. trade disruptions. You know, I think we could disagree on that, but it may be the position of the minister. But nonetheless, I would have expected the minister, after saying all the great work that that he and his department, along with other departments, are doing to reduce red tape, that the minister would recognize that more work needs to be done in the regulatory burden that government imposes on businesses. You know, I'd like to still get a response to that, because it seems like it's something that we actually agree on, considering the minister speaking for 4 or 5 minutes on the great things that that he's doing around cutting red tape and the regulatory burden. So then it's odd for him to, in closing, defend that nothing needs to be done to improve the regulatory burden. You know, but maybe the minister can add his clarification into the response to the next question, because I think we desperately need to move on. We're kind of talking in circles here and not getting a clear picture of the economic position of our province. So along with that previous question, I'd also like the minister to answer what this government's real GDP growth was for the past fiscal year.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you. So going to the member opposite's question regarding regulatory burden, I think very clearly we agree that we can always do a little bit better, and our government is making significant steps to improve on what we found to be a lot of regulatory burden that was left by the former government. I mentioned some significant improvements we've made in the mining sector and mining permitting, reducing the processing time by 28%. I highlighted some significant improvements we made to the quarry backlog, improving that by about 24% reduction on the backlog. It's real significant improvements to the regulatory processing mess that was left by the former government. We also, at the same time, are streamlining our processes with the one project, one review, signing on to the mutual recognition agreement with all other provinces and territories to ensure that goods can flow as seamlessly as possible across our country. And for that, we were able to successfully get one of the top grades from the CFIB's interprovincial trade report. We continue to make significant efforts to streamline our processes, but I'll highlight for the member opposite and I said this in the first time I responded to this question. If the member opposite is claiming there's red tape or regulatory burden, if he can single out one specific regulatory burden, it would be very helpful. He could maybe signal one thing. He has had 3 opportunities to say one specific thing that he would like to change in terms of the regulatory approach. He hasn't done so, and if he'd like to do so, he's more than willing to. But I'll move on to a second point of his question, where he's referring to the real GDP forecast, which we have in our budget here. Real GDP forecast to be 1.6% for 2025. And so that is what we have forecast in our 2025 budget. That's what you were asking for last year, right? Correct? Right, so that's what we have in our budget here. Manitoba's real GDP is forecast to be 1.6% in 2025. Now getting back to that regulatory burden, we'll continue to make improvements. Our government is focused on being as efficient and well-working government as possible, not only for the goals that we have, which are growing our economy with good jobs for Manitobans, fixing and improving our healthcare, making life more affordable. We're going to advance on all those areas, and part of that approach to making life work for working Manitobans and for businesses to thrive is to ensure that they have the right economic landscape, right environment and sectors, ecosystem to thrive in. And so we'll continue to make sure we reduce as many unneeded barriers, and at the same time ensure that we work in a way that uplifts as many companies by providing the right sort of supports that they would need, like ensuring we have our export support program that works for them, like ensuring we have the right sort of capital funding program, right? Like making sure we have a tax system that removes the PSC off of manufacturing equipment, which has helped many manufacturers make more investments right here in Manitoba. So all these things align to supporting the growth of an economy that works better for Manitobans than what we've seen previously, and works better and responds better to the uncertainty and the challenges we've faced over the last 2 years.
The member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. Yeah, I don't think we have enough time for me to go over all the regulatory burden that is driving businesses away, that's deterring businesses from investing in Manitoba. But I can also, to expand on that, I don't just need to talk about the regulatory burden that's limiting the growth in our province. I can speak specifically to the regulatory burden that the NDP government has brought in during their not even 3 short years of government that is now creating uncertainty from investors and small business owners in our province. I stood up in the House, and I think I went 3 days in a row speaking about 2 significant economic contributors, not only in my constituency, not only in the province, but in in the entire country. We have natural proteins incorporated in the Bloom Nord area, a significant value-added agriculture food processor that had looked at setting up a new processing piece of equipment. It was a dryer, a dual-purpose dryer, and they had purchased it from a Canadian company called Law Merit, world-recognized agriculture processing company that provides equipment for that industry. They're based out of Quebec, and they provide their equipment all across the country. This company, NPI, is in my corner of the province. Law Merit's based out of Quebec, but because of the value-added agriculture expansion that we're seeing, the explosion in the industry in Saskatchewan right now, this company identified Manitoba as a real logical location to set up manufacturing. So instead of shipping the product, this is large, bulky agriculture, drying equipment and processing equipment, instead of shipping it clear across the country, since the largest demand for their equipment is in Western Canada, it made most logical sense to set up in Manitoba. After a full year of a convoluted process that has been added to by the NDP government since the PC's left office, and that's a fact because NPI, the owner Ryan, had established that processing facility under the previous PC government and set up a very similar dryer. This company, who functions within our country, daily establishes new sites, was blocked by operating their equipment in Manitoba only. At the same time as they were establishing these large-scale, multi-million-dollar processing sites in Ontario, they were also establishing them in Saskatchewan in unison, the same day, same time, same crews were building. That multi-million-dollar piece of equipment sat idle. Unfortunately, what came of that is very little correspondence between the Department of the Government, his company, me as the representative, and what that led to is NPI looking at expanding their expansion in processing to Saskatchewan, and Law Merit completely discouraged from establishing anything further in Manitoba, and they're moving their Western operations into Saskatchewan. Two businesses that we're losing as a result of the additional red tape and regulation. Not long-standing red tape and regulation, and I'm not defending that that doesn't exist, but this is a new establishment of regulation that has limited the efficient development of businesses. So going back to draw this into a question, I'd ask what the real GDP growth, the actual real GDP growth was for the past fiscal year.
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Chair. We certainly understand the impacts that businesses and the challenges that businesses face when they're setting up. There's a lot of capital costs, understanding permitting regulatory approaches, and our government focuses on, certainly our department focuses on helping businesses navigate those challenges. And particularly we have folks who specifically work with businesses to help them navigate our system. So we're very happy to work with businesses from any corner of the province to help them navigate setting up shop, expanding their operations, understanding what resources and tools and programs would be available to support their business. We'll continue to do this work. We can find out whether there's any specific instances where we can find ways to work as efficiently as possible. And so we can certainly, and we'll certainly continue to do that work. Look, one of the things you understand that I've learned through experience in this role is that governments work best when they continue to listen to folks, listen to the community members. So we spend a lot of time listening to businesses, listening to workers, and understanding how we can ensure that our economic system that we're setting up is working best for them. That's what we've been doing since we've been in government, what we've reiterated part of our broader economic development strategy. Is our ability to respond to the needs and the growing changes that we're seeing in the business community, but also to set ourselves up to always be responsive to the quick changing nature of the business landscape, so that we can always remain competitive. So that's part of our goal. We'll continue to do that work under the landscape and the overall framework where we're seeing uncertainty from U.S. and Chinese markets, where we're seeing international conflicts in Europe and in the Middle East play a role in prices for businesses and for consumers here in North America, and where we're seeing other international challenges that are making supply chains more difficult. So we'll continue to monitor these sorts of situations, act proactively to advocate for Manitoba businesses, and respond in the most appropriate way that allows businesses to continue to thrive, expand here in Manitoba, and set up shop here to grow and create more good jobs for Manitobans. When it comes to real GDP, as a member also asked, real GDP growth in 2024 was 1.7%. Now that's the real number, is 1.7%. What I mentioned before in my previous response was Manitoba's real GDP forecast of 1.6% for 2025. The GDP is calculated, and it comes up about 11 months after the fiscal year, and is typically not available until November. So what we presented in our budget is the Manitoba's real GDP forecast, which is 1.6% for 2025. And that's our forecast, which won't be confirmed until November. And what I just said there was our real GDP change of 1.7%, which was for 2024.
The Honourable Member for La-Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. So it was forecasted at 1.6%, and now I suppose not officially. I'm talking 2025. Real GDP growth is unofficially calculated at 1.1%, one of the lowest in Canada. Would the minister agree that that is correct?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Chair. We take a responsible approach to forecasting these economic numbers, which is why what we do is we use the average of 7 private forecasts. We partner with 7 private agencies that provide these forecasts. Plus, we use a Manitoba Bureau of Statistics who does their own analysis. So our forecast number of 1.6 is a calculation that is supported in a responsible approach that is averaged out by 7 separate private forecasts. So if member opposite is kind of cherry picking the lowest number of 1.1 out of a series of forecasts, I think that's a bit unfair. We're taking a more responsible approach by instead actually taking an average of 7 different forecasts. And it also suggests to the member opposite that if he's cherry picking the lowest number of 1.1, there's also another forecast that's got to be equally as high to make our average 1.6, which is what we printed in our budget. So there are a variety of forecasts for what our GDP would look like for 2025. And there could be some that's well over 2%. And so I don't think it's fair to characterize our real GDP forecast for 2025 at 1.1% at all. We've responsibly forecasted 1.6 as an average of 7 different private forecast scenarios.
The Honourable Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. So I just brought it up on the second, what is this? The second quarter report, 25-26, presented by the province of Manitoba by the Honourable Finance Minister. So this is this government's report, and it showcases to the end of December 2025, the real GDP growth is at 1.1%. And then in Finance Committee last week, the Honourable Finance Minister had also highlighted the real 2025 GDP growth at 1.1%. So I was just wanting to confirm that. So now, from what I understand from the minister here today, that their report isn't accurate, and what the finance minister had said last week is also not accurate. But what I wanted to establish is the facts. So we drew out the fact of the forecast being 1.6% from what we've been told by the finance minister in the government's report. And I could supply the minister potentially the page number, I think page 15 of the second quarter report prepared by the province of Manitoba. That in fact the real GDP growth was 1.1%. I'd appreciate if the minister could confirm that, but also don't want to dwell on that, because I'd like to also know, along with that, ideally a confirmation of that the government's report is accurate. I think we have some concern if it isn't, but along with that, what number is this government forecasting for the coming year real GDP growth?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you. I'll just respond quickly to this because if there's another question, I might have missed it. But so I just want to confirm. I think the member is quoting our December 20 Q2 report, where there was a projection of 1.1% growth. But then at budget, which is also acts as our Q3 report for 2025, there was a revised number for upwards for that projection to be 1.6, which is what I said in my last response. So meaning our, excuse me, the 1.6 number that I said is an updated number updated from the 1.1.
The Honourable Member for La Vérendrye.
Thank you. Thank you, Honourable Chair. With that, would the minister be able to provide us what the GDP per capita is for the province?
The Honourable Minister.
Thank you. So the real GDP per capita, and I just want to clarify, if I'm giving a number for 2025, it would have to be a forecast because we won't have the confirmed real GDP numbers for 2025 for a few more months. So I just wanted to confirm that for members opposite, the number I'd be giving is a forecast. What we have here is real GDP at 52,699 would be our real GDP per capita, and that would be forecast for 2025. Now, having said that, that's our real GDP number. It is one in which it has increased year over year, so we're actually seeing that number rise, even modestly. I think that's a sign that not only are the decisions that we're taking to grow our economy very positive, but they have been well received, and we're seeing some positive impacts in terms of actual impacts in people's lives. So both, as the member has mentioned early on, what are some of those economic impact indicators that we look at? One is GDP, but another one is jobs, unemployment. Another one is real wages. And so when we look at all those things combined, we want to ensure that Manitobans have opportunities to work, but mainly opportunities to work in good paying jobs, ones that can afford them the quality of life that we would want for all Manitobans. And so I think that that is a signal that shows that not only do we have a real GDP that is impactful for folks, but that's actually growing and improving our economy in Manitoba.
The hour being 5 p.m., committee rise.